Charleston White's past is one of the most crazy stories never told in length.
Jacket theft led to the death of 34-year-old Michael Levy last September.
He said some of the wildest stuff we've ever heard on the internet.
I ain't fought in one shit, let alone three, just me nowhere.
From his hilarious internet commentary
To God, my sausage fist. I get mad, don't want to shake hands.
to his offensive tone in today's internet cancel culture.
Make me curl my king going I don't give a fuck about his mama.
And even further to his underlying serious tone in delivery when it comes to the black culture.
All these black coaches out here, and we can't get the light. We can't bring this over here.
Charleston White's rise to fame is interesting, but it's not free of conflict. After all, years before you ever heard him say fuck your favorite rapper, he stood for the same thing and said the same things.
Claim to be real, looking and he a boy, this daddy.
But it all fell on deaf ears. This is the untold truth about Charleston White, how a youth advocate infiltrated hip-hop. Charleston White was born May 17, 1977 in Fort Worth, Texas. Charleston White grew up in the 80s with his single mother and older brother. Charleston, unlike the typical Black in America story, is straightforward about the fact that he mostly grew up in a financial stable environment.
Home, but I grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood, so I didn't.
And that is because his mother had landed a job at General Motors, one of the best careers you could have in the DFW area at the time. Charleston grew up in a loving environment with a strong mother and a spiritual foundation from his mother, whom he reveres and quotes often.
Just we stand on it. That's why I can repeat a lot of shit my mama said.
In his younger life, Charleston would suffer some pretty gruesome injuries, especially when you consider that he was a child when they occurred. When Charleston was just 5 years old, he lost his eye in a slingshot accident.
Put my right eye out. So I've had 9 eye surgeries.
Soon after that, Charleston would break everything below his waist in a dryer accident. He had to wear a body cast and completely learn how to walk again, all at the age of 5.
A bone pop out here, I had pins in my leg. This is at 5 years old.
Despite those challenges, Charleston White's family structure and upbringing still remained the same. The beginning of Charleston White as an intellectual came because of these incidents, having to be tutored by a private tutor due to his inability to go to school.
I had a tutor, so I didn't get to go to school, right? So that happened at 5, so I remember.
And although his mother had provided a life for him and his brother, he still faced the same challenges that any young black male would with the lack of a father. Charleston White recalls his introduction to street life through the older males in his family.
And work, because I'd never seen a man get up and go to work. Wow.
Charleston recalls his grandfather being a pimp, barbershop owner, whom also made headlines in a drug operation in Fort Worth.
It's a major federal drug case and make the front page paper, right?
His uncle was also a pimp, so the men he did have in his life were mostly street characters. In the upper parts of his childhood, Charleston's story would start to play out like most of Black America with the absence of his father. There was about to be a takeover of our youth at the time, which includes Charleston White. The way to the youth's ear is music. See, MTV came out in the 80s.
We have
and hip-hop was starting to be born as well. When hip-hop was born, it was the first genre of music that reflected urban youth of the Black community.
Well, the house where Big Daddy Kane grew up.
Fat met me in Bed-Stuy because that's where I'm from.
And our voices could be heard through our flavor, through our voice. Hip-hop started as a party genre of music. Hip-hop was fun and positive. Acts like LL Cool J, Big Daddy Kane all made hip-hop rise to national popularity. In 1988, Yo MTV Raps launched its first episode.
TV Raps.
Now, like I told y'all, hip-hop reflected the reality of urban Black youth in America. And in 1988, that reality was starting to shift.
A drug so powerful it will empty the money from your pockets. Make you.
Economic struggles and the rise of gangs in inner cities began to seep into the lyrics. Artists like NWA emerged, narrating the harsh truths of street and gang life.
Friends, 5 black guys walking together as a gang, in the police eyes.
Giving a raw, unfiltered voice to those experiences. These images were now being fed to our young, impressionable youth, and as Charleston White recalls, with no father present, he was a part of that generation.
Like the music, it's the propaganda for our destruction.
Gangsterism was starting to be pushed to our youth in film, in music, and in television, and the prison numbers shockingly correlate with the rise in crime amongst the consumers of such content. For me, I can't help but to at least fathom the possibility of hip-hop becoming mainstream and black youth becoming violent by design. Charleston would start to rebel against his mother and his entire upbringing.
Stage. And of course the adolescent stage is gonna be a bunch of rebellion.
Right.
Although he was privileged, he would seek that validation from his peers and the rest of the black community and start to hang out in the hood and ultimately started to get in trouble. Charleston's family structure and home base would start to see changes. His mother had become pregnant with his sister. In that time, Charleston would go on a crime spree that would not only land him in trouble, but will ultimately change the path of his life. In '91, the starter jacket was probably one of the hottest items of clothing a teenager or even adult male could have at the time. As a part of Charleston White's '91 crime spree, Charleston White and a few friends met in a stolen car at Forum 303 Mall in Grand Prairie. Charleston and crew went with the intention to steal some starter jackets to wear to a teen club.
Mall. We went inside Foot Locker. That's when the starter jackets was popular.
Right.
We ran.
Either way, Charleston and co go into the mall, grab the jackets, and run out.
Starter jacket theft led to the death of 34-year-old Michael Levy last September.
Upon trying to escape, newlywed Michael Levy, a white man, tried to stop the teens from stealing the jackets, in which Charleston White passes his friend a gun and instructed him to shoot Mr. Levy.
And he shoot him. He wasn't trying to kill him.
Ultimately executing him, leading to Charleston and co. being wrapped up in a capital murder case.
Capital.
We September 18, 1991, man, we was charged with capital murder.
Charleston White was 14 when this happened, and because he was 14, he wasn't able to be tried as an adult and was sentenced to 12 years incarceration as a plea agreement. And in July of 1993, Charleston White took the stand in a Fort Worth courtroom and testified against his co-defendants.
Testified against his friend, Antoine Doolittle, who sat just a few.
He was just 16, a child with a loving mother who raised him to tell the truth.
And then what happened? He fired.
Like many of us, now facing the weight of street codes and courtroom oaths. That moment caught on camera still sparks debate to this day. And while many people thought this would be the end of Charleston White, he showed and proved that not only are the street codes not real, but he and his career would not be affected by this.
You're gonna be rich and famous. It don't change nothing.
Charleston White was sent to Giddings State School, and at the time, the institution was filled with child murderers. In Giddings, Charleston would meet some of his lifelong friends, including one that you see with him right now today, Anthony Dewberry. While Charleston was sent there to rehabilitate, the opposite had happened. Charleston joined the Rolling 60s Crips in prison.
You know what I'm saying?
Charleston, he was 60s, huh?
Rolling 60.
Despite Charleston's struggles as a troublemaker, due to his intelligence and charisma, Charleston had gained the grace of some of the administrators there. When it was time for the state to make the choice to send him to prison, 2 white female wardens actually testified on his behalf.
But these 2 white people put their jobs on the line to come back and testify on my behalf.
And although he wasn't released that day, he was not sent to prison.
To the custody of the Texas Youth Commission, where I stayed another 3 years.
He returned to Giddings and was released when he was 21. Charleston White speaks about the time transitioning out of the boys' home to adulthood as being kind of an awkward period of time for him.
14 to 21. Look at that big old gap. You know how much.
Imagine being away from society from 14 to 21 and then thrown back into the world. Long story short, Charleston peddled around with being a street dude, from hustling to pimping, you name it. Charleston, like most black men, was lost, trying to find his way until he had kids. Becoming a father is probably what saved Charleston and turned him into what he is today. However, there's a whole book to be written about just that point in time. However, this video is about the infiltration. The first law of infiltration is entry. See, Charleston had become a youth advocate at this point, and he founded his organization called Hype.
To give you a little history and background information about who I am.
Charleston had transformed from a troubled kid to helping kids in trouble. He climbed the legal ladder in high levels in Washington, D.C., while remaining committed to aiding poor children.
What's up, little homie? Y'all right?
Charleston White and Fort Worth connected with local legend Weasel, the closest thing Fort Worth has ever seen to a Black Panther. If you know anything about the Panthers, then you know they stood on feeding the children. Together they fed children in the impoverished Stop 6 neighborhood. This was Charleston's first step in infiltrating hip-hop, a genre primarily consumed by the youth, especially the poor youth. And unlike their favorite rappers and even some of the figures in the neighborhood they looked up to, Charleston White actually fed them every morning.
Selling pesos in the morning till them kids get on off to school.
The first level of infiltration had been met. Charleston had gained the trust of the poor youth. The next step to infiltration is navigation to the objective, coupled with avoiding detection. And in this context, avoiding detection actually works the other way. Charleston, an active Facebook user just like most of Fort Worth, initially went unnoticed in the community despite his work with hype and in the political rankings. That was until
Faithfully execute. That I will faithfully execute.
His breakthrough came unexpectedly when President Trump was elected. Charleston's controversial yet truthful remarks about the black community while wearing a Make America Great Again hat gained a lot of attention.
Nigga, when you got to go to soul searching and analyzing who you are.
Charleston was starting to figure out a twisted yet effective aspect of content creation, and that's the fact that negativity sells. He continued doing his community work, often broadcasting live from City Hall.
And if your language is inappropriate, you will be removed from the chamber.
Well, I'm not a civil man.
Going crazy, getting kicked out of churches.
Y'all get this bitch in. Y'all know this bitch over here fucking with me.
Sometimes even on live stream, still while openly criticizing detrimental elements of the black community, such as gangs and OGs.
This what you gotta punch through, and I ain't seen no nigga that whoop one of these.
This bold stance against gangs and OGs in Fort Worth was starting to go viral. See, the second level of infiltration had been achieved because remember, avoiding detection in this context actually meant gaining detection. And this happened unexpectedly when a video meant to embarrass him actually put him on top.
Told me this morning, hey man, nigga, I better go to the police.
See, in this video, Charleston allegedly goes to the police station and snitches on a Crip set out of Fort Worth.
Y'all tune in. I'm gonna show y'all how I'm going to gang unit in a minute.
The sister of popular rapper posted the video in hopes of shaming Charleston White. Instead, the shock value of that video took that video to the next level. This was a whole new set of eyes and ears for Charleston to captivate. Charleston started to do interviews with platforms like Dallas Global, Real Tune TV, where he would echo some of the sentiments from his live stream.
The motherfucking thing was shoot guns and cause violence and destruction.
Charleston would gain the attention of Say Cheese CEO Sean Cotton, and that would also take Charleston to a whole nother level. Sean Cotton, a Philly native / DFW native, built his platform from the ground up to a cultural staple in hip hop.
Stuff like that to the South, Houston, Dallas, OKC.
One of the most admirable things about Sean Cotton and Say Cheese is that he has the power to change anyone's life, and that's what he did with Charleston White, with them releasing series of interviews, becoming a Vlad and Boosie-like duo in their own right. The next step of infiltration is gaining information. Now, Charleston is still in this step. However, as he's gone higher, he leaks data and information from the top. He spoke about the Hollywood rituals, the twisted lifestyle of the richest people, amongst other things.
You put me on the camera with a trans.
However, as far as the heights that Charleston has reached, he starred in movies.
Conjure my services.
He sold out comedy tours all around the country. Charleston has a lot of hate. However, he also has a lot of love. Celebrities like Cam Newton, Kevin Gates, and many others have all spoke highly and embraced Charleston, because whether you can get past the harsh tone and sometimes even the antics.
I ain't seen it before I told you. I know.
From the beginning, Charleston White has had a message. The only difference is
education or skill.
Is that he's got to talk like your favorite rapper in order for you to listen.
Food, shelter, clothing. We ain't training these kids. We ain't training these motherfuckers.